Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. Today's episode is called Which Banks Will Collapse After Silicon Valley Bank? Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel for free. You can also like, comment, and follow us. We're going to have a lot of great celebrity interviews coming up, so make sure to click on that notification bell so you can be notified every time we upload a new episode. Also, we ask that you post a link to today's show on all your social media to help spread the word. Now, let's get started. We believe that what you're seeing now in the banking sector is just the beginning of the nightmare that will be unfolding. We reached out to our inside sources and found that most of the financial industry feels that the worst is yet to come when it comes to bank closures. So before we start discussing what banks will collapse next, we want to preface this discussion with a few things. First, this situation is changing hourly. There's also what people and the media can see happening in real time. There's what's going on behind closed doors at the White House and within the banking industry itself. There's what Congress is doing. And then most importantly, there are things happening now that no one wants to discuss openly because they don't want to trigger an even larger bank run. So our goal here is to tell you what's really going on behind closed doors without doing more damage to some banks or the people keeping their money in those banks. We see a huge number of people pulling their money out of small and regional banks and putting their money into the big five banks. Those banks are JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, U.S. Bancorp. We believe that anyone still keeping their money in a small credit union or a regional bank may be exposing themselves to much more risk than ever before and much more risk than they can even imagine. What sort of risk might that be? Well, if there's a run on one of the smaller or mid-sized banks, then they may not be able to endure it for more than a few days before they collapse. Also, it's much easier for the government to prop up or bail out a small bank than it is for them to bail out a medium-sized bank. Also, there are small banks out there which tend to cater to clients in specific industries, specific sectors like farming or Silicon Valley. And if that sector gets hit hard, the way Silicon Valley Bank just got hit, because it's in the Silicon Valley, then that could jeopardize a bank's viability. So going forward, what are the highest risk banks, and should their depositors begin pulling out of them? The highest risk banks tend to be the smaller banks that aren't as politically connected to Washington, D.C. Now, none of the experts want to talk about this. None of the commentators on TV want to talk about this. All they want to talk about are metrics and all of that. None of that matters if you're going under and you're not connected to DC. None of it matters. Don't allow the commentators to deceive you. If they aren't big enough and protected enough by Washington, D.C., then I can't trust any of these banks with my money. I believe that's one of the reasons that so many people are moving their money to the five super banks mentioned above. Now, there are all sorts of bank lists being posted on the internet that some media and organizations claim are extremely high risk and too dangerous to keep people's money in. Do we agree with those lists? Well, we agree with some of the banks on those lists being higher risk, but the government is now changing things so quickly that we believe those lists may be changing on a daily basis. The next question is, how soon will more banks collapse? That depends on what the government does over the next few hours, days, and weeks. If they continue to do more bailouts that they claim are not bailouts, then the way we see it, more banks will collapse. But if there are too many banks with enormous losses announced, then can the government bail them out? Probably not. But remember, even the government's resources are limited. When there was a major collapse in 2008, then the big rumor was that the government needed the drug money and the cartels to keep the ATMs working in the U.S. No one has ever been able to confirm that, but it sounds plausible given how bad things were back then. But now, the amount of debt in the U.S. is much higher than back then. In 2008, the national debt was just over $10 trillion. It's now more than $31 trillion and climbing. If the situation now were to deteriorate so badly that the ATMs stopped working and the banks started restricting people's access to their money, does anyone believe that the politicians will deal with the cartels to pump their cash into our financial system to prevent rioting in the streets and a growing bank failure? We believe they would. During World War II, the government did a deal with the mob to help secure the safety of U.S. docks and ports on the East Coast. Would this really be that much different? We believe that more banks will collapse soon if Washington, D.C. doesn't step in with more aggressive laws and regulations. Here's an interesting rumor we keep hearing. We keep hearing rumors that cartels are already pumping tremendous amounts of money through the U.S. banking system in the Southwest now. If that's true, then one could argue that any bank that knowingly or unknowingly has drug cartels pumping their money through those banks by using their legitimate, seemingly legitimate front companies, then that bank is probably going to be better capitalized with their illegitimate drug customers than a lot of small and regional banks are capitalized with their legitimate customers. So what should you do? Well, we don't give financial advice, but a lot of people are already moving their money to larger and more politically connected banks and financial institutions. Stay tuned for what's coming next. We suspect things will get much worse very soon. And remember, it's good to count the metrics. It's good to stay on top of the latest announcements. But when your bank collapses, none of that is going to save you. What will save you are your connections to the White House. That's the ugly truth of it. That's what nobody on CNBC or some of the other stations wants to discuss. But that is the ugly truth of it. Thank you for watching. I want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel for free. You can also like, comment, and follow us. We're going to have a lot of great celebrity interviews coming up, so make sure to click on the notification bell so you can be notified every time we upload a new episode. Also, we ask that you post a link to today's episode of our show on all your social media to help get the word out. Thank you, and we shall talk to you soon. Bye-bye.